There needs to be a more mature multinational approach in terms of how we actually deal with this problem,
Yes,
for sure.
exactly right. Because we've also got the problem, I believe, of about 300 to 400 former jihadis who went to fight for ISIS have been let back into Britain already. I mean, we hear about these very high-profile cases like Jihadi Jack and Shamima Begum, but there's many others who we don't hear about who are already back here. Now, I don't know, and I'm not sure I have any confidence in the way the state is rehabilitating those individuals.
I think that there are some people who feel that these individuals can be de-radicalised.
Yes.
I think
What do you think?
I have a more conservative position. I think that I'm still sceptical. I want to see more positive results.
Yeah.
But I think also with that, this is an experiment at the end of the day. You know, I'm very conservative when it comes to law and order and public security. This isn't something to experiment with. I think ultimately, you know, I'm very skeptical of those de-radicalisation programs and how they're actually being orchestrated. This idea that we get former ex-extremists, you know, spearheading these programs, I think it's political correct-ness.
Well, I'm not
mad,
sure
really.
about anybody who's a former political extremist or a jihadi becoming somehow more de-radicalised and able to help people stop other people from doing exactly what they've done.
I think it's risky. That's
very
my
risky.
view.
Yeah, because, I mean, you have to buy into the fact that first you have to just believe them, which might not be a good idea to begin with. And when you see what happened at London Bridge, when you see people becoming radicalised just as a result of being on the internet with some people without ever having to go and be trained to do anything, and you hear the police are still fighting every day about 500 different cases that they're investigating, you know, we still have a massive problem in this country, and it's just been fortunate, I think, that we haven't had an incident of terror for a while.
I think that we should be very grateful to our intelligence communities. They do, you know, exceptionally good work in terms of trying to keep us as safe as possible. I think in terms of, as I said before, this thing with the de-radicalisation programs, I think it's a very risky way in terms of conducting counter-extremism policy.
The problem for the royal family is this, right? When Meghan and Harry tell us that they're only going to have one more child because they don't want to create problems for the environment, that they are eco-warriors, that they are going to plant trees, they're going to stay and have £120,000 a week billionaire's holiday resort. I'm reliably informed by one of my better informed listeners that Meghan Markle's hat alone cost 500 quid. That's the one she's wearing in the picture where she's carrying the baby. It's astonishing. And as for Prince Andrew, the man, quite frankly, is a disgrace. There, I've said it.
We've got all these people sitting there coming out saying all this thing. Would one MP stand up in the House or stand up on BBC or your programme, whatever, and say how he thinks that this country would be, how it would go if we was to revoke Article 50? Do they honestly believe that 17.4 million people, the best supported election in history, that voted to leave? We didn't leave without a deal. We voted to leave. What do you think would happen in this country if we bow down to these European bureaucrats?
The thing with Brexit is that there was a great deal of political disaffection which drove the Leave vote, which was delivered in June 2016. People who were less likely to feel that they could identify with a political party, who felt that their voice wasn't being heard, that they had a lack of personal political influence, they were more likely to vote Leave. And I find it amazing that we have these pro-Remain politicians, these bureaucrats who are looking to block Brexit. This doesn't matter to them. This is about the health of our own democracy. But for them, it doesn't even factor into their thinking at all. And I think that's deeply worrying. And I think the problems that we've encountered in terms of the Brexit negotiations is largely because there's too many people involved who are actually trying to thwart Brexit in terms of actually trying to deliver it.
I've got plenty of time for people who say to me, look, we need to save the world. It would be a really good idea if you stopped flying quite as much as you do. But to be wealthy enough to just say, you know what, I'm going to fly wherever I like, but as long as I pay some money to some spurious company somewhere in Islington, I'll feel fine about it.
Okay, yes, it's a bit hypocritical. I don't know that the company is spurious. You're quite right, there have been offset scams. There have been schemes that didn't work. This one looks quite good. Ideally, we should send all the money out to reduce carbon emissions and not fly. But,
well, exactly.
That's
I mean,
not
that's what I'm
not
saying.
what the royals will do.
I mean, I wouldn't agree with you that we shouldn't fly anywhere, but if you had that point of view, and I'm sure you may well have it, I'd be perfectly happy to let you have that view, and I would respect it. But what I wouldn't respect is if you told everybody else that we really shouldn't fly, and then you went and got on straight on a private jet and flew off to Madagascar.
Okay, yes, all right, so that's hypocritical, but it doesn't change the science. We still have a climate crisis.
Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about today, Anthony. We're talking about the fact that people who are very hypocritical, for example, I mean, look at the boat trip currently being taken to New York by Greta and her father and a few other people. They're flying people to New York so that they can bring the boat back here. I mean, that seems to me to be a bit of a waste of time.
Right, but the climate crisis is far more important than the hypocrisy.
Oh, is it?
Absolutely.
Oh, I
the
see.
climate crisis is going to affect every one of us.
So I can be as hypocritical about it as I want then and just keep talking about there being a climate crisis. As long as I keep talking about it, that's fine.
Well, I don't say that's fine, but it doesn't change the science. It doesn't change.
Well, you've just said the hypocrisy is less important than the emergency. So therefore, if we all carry on being...
we've got to deal with the emergency, not with the
Yes, but
hypocrisy.
do you not see that if you're a hypocrite, you're not dealing with the emergency?
Right. Well, let's accept there are some hypocrites because there are a lot of people who are not hypocrites and they are dealing with it, and we've got to deal with it, whether we're hypocrites or not.
Well, I saw a guy from Extinction Rebellion being interviewed on television the other day who said that 6 million people, or 6 billion people rather, were going to be wiped off the face of the earth within the next 20 or 30 years, which is clearly nonsense.
Well, yeah, may well be.
May well be. Well, it's quite a dramatic statement to make. I mean, but this is the statement that's being made by the people who say the science is very clear.
Right. Well, I didn't think it was that clear.
I don't think it is.
To see that many people wiped off. It's a possibility. I mean, we could see 20 or 30 million people wiped off the Earth, or whatever the figure was, 6 billion.
6 billion,
yeah. The Earth. Yeah, we could see that if, for example, we get some sort of virus or disease which we can't cope with. Well, you can't predict that.
No, of course you can't. But that's my point. I mean, that's always my point when we have this conversation, that there's a lot that you can't predict, and there is a lot that you can't foresee, and there is a lot that you cannot absolutely and utterly prove.
Quite right. But as far as the climate is concerned, as opposed to diseases and things like that, the predictions are pretty certain.
Well, they're predictions, though, aren't they? You can't have a certain prediction until you know what's happened.
Right, but if you wait until see what's happened, it could be too late.
It could be, but all I'm saying is you can't be sure that you will be right.
You can't.
But,
no.
So therefore, it's not actually a climate emergency. It might be a climate emergency.
Well, the government's decided it's an emergency.
The government can't decide whether they can leave the European Union or not, never mind what the future of the world holds for us.
I think it's a bit of a culture shock for the European Union because they've had a process over the last 2 or 3 years where they've basically made demands of the UK, and our former Prime Minister Theresa May basically was happy to accept the crumbs from the table from them, and there was very much a supplicatory approach that we had to agree everything, including the Northern Ireland backstop at the end of December 2017. And I think it is a bit of a shock to the system for them that we're actually back in the game in terms of negotiating Article 50. And they have a very clear choice to make. They can either sacrifice future relationship and future trade with the United Kingdom, Europe's second biggest economy, fifth biggest economy in the world, on the basis of a tiny proportion of trade that goes across the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, or they can be pragmatic and practical, get around the table and drop the back.
I just feel as though there is a kind of, mission creep, if you like, which will end up with Northern Ireland outside of the UK. And I mean, obviously, there would be plenty of people on the island of Ireland who would be quite happy if that happened, and a smaller minority of people perhaps who would be much more unhappy about it.
Well, the problem with Leo Varadkar and the Foreign Minister Simon Coveney is they've been persuaded to take one for the team by the European Union. Now, you never lose any votes in the Republic of Ireland by bashing the Brits, and I accept that, and it would be naive not to concede that point. But the fact of the matter is that he has taken a huge gamble. He's put everything on the table on red, and it may come up black, because a no deal means that, given that 80% of goods that go across the world have to go through Great Britain from the Republic of Ireland, and 50%, for instance, of the beef industry in the Republic of Ireland goes directly to Great Britain.
Yeah.
No deal is a catastrophe for the Irish economy, and they may very well have overplayed their hand.
I just remember when I was quite young, I'm 42 now, and I remember when I was growing up, they used to say things like, oh, if you want to go to the Maldives, you better go there now before, climate change.
Yes.
They won't be there because they're so low-lying with the seas rising and things like that. And as you get older, you just look back on all what you've been told, and you just think, what a load of rubbish. I don't believe in it really, Mike, if I'm honest with you.
Well, the thing is, it's not a question of whether you believe in it or not, but that's what they're trying to make everybody do, right? Because there aren't actually any facts. It's not a matter of fact that the Earth is going to be destroyed in 10 years' time. It's not a matter of fact that billions of people are going to die. It's not a matter of fact that we're not going to be able to breathe air. It's all supposition and prediction, isn't it?
But not to be disrespectful to that chap that you had on earlier, but they're just so condescending and they are so adamant that it is going to be that way, and it infuriates me because you're absolutely right. Say when I was young, they used to say the Maldives, well, they're still there, I could go there tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly, and it's not underwater, and they also said, if you remember, back in 1989, the United Nations, who everybody says is this great sort of, scientific organisation, which is rubbish to begin with, they said in 1989 that large areas of the world would be underwater by the year 2000, not just the Maldives, but all sorts of other parts of the world. They even said, I remember seeing a sort of a simulation which said that Canary Wharf, which is where I was working at the time, was going to be half covered in water.
Because of the I know, because of the sea levels rising, and you just look back and you think what they've told you over the years, and you just think, but then you've got obnoxious people coming on like that guy saying, well, no, he's going to be arguing with you, and you're like, but how can you argue when you're not talking fact?
Right.
And also, on the subject of Harry and Meghan, if I could just say as well, I think it's a real shame because I think Meghan's just a pure celebrity. I think she does everything the celebrity way, and I think that William and Kate have just kind of got the royal family in a good perspective with the rest of the country. They've got the taxpayers supporting them, a lovely family, very respectable, very nice, and I think it's such a shame because I think that she's just a celebrity. She does things her way, and it's her way or the highway.
Do you think as well, Marie, and I don't wish to be unkind to Americans because, I have many American friends, but I think I think being an American hasn't helped her because it's hard to understand the British psyche sometimes. It's hard to know how the Brits are if you are not a British person. Do you know what I mean?
It is, yeah, and I mean, they do have a lot of admiration for the royals, but they are a very different kind of person of the Americans. They are very strong in what they believe. But I just think that it's such a shame, Mike, because I think that we've just got in a place where we were all kind of getting a bit on board with them and thinking, we were real proud again to have our royal family. And I just think they're so hypocritical in do as I say, don't do as I do.
And also, I find it a bit distasteful as well, I have to say, that they're getting their holidays paid for by Elton John.
Yeah, I do, and don't you think it just you'd think that they would think, well, we're rich enough. I mean, I heard yesterday on your show on the news about that she doesn't think that Frogmore Cottage is going to be good enough now. She wants to move to Windsor Castle,
right?
And it's like, hang on a minute, you need to get in the real world. You're a royal. You're not a celebrity anymore. You know, like with the baby showers and not showing the baby. I know I've kind of gone off course a little bit.
That's what we do, Marie.
I just think.
No, listen, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I'd love to hear from you again, Marie. Thank you very much indeed. Very sensible woman there from Castleford in West Yorkshire. She's quite right. You're a member of the royal family, Meghan Markle. You are not a celebrity. Get with the programme. Stop taking free trips on private jets from Elton John and stop hanging about with Oprah Winfrey and do something decent instead. Your fear, I suppose, at this point is that they will somehow move on the backstop at the final hour and we will then be forced to sort of accept the agreement without the backstop but with all of this other stuff still in it. Absolutely, because the backstop, as we know, it's a, at the end of the day, they don't really want Brexit to happen at all. But they know that, and that they also don't want no deal to happen. So they would rather have an agreement with us, and they know the backstop costs them nothing at all. It doesn't actually cost them anything to get rid of the backstop. So they can always drop it at the very last minute if they think that's going to stop no deal. And that is my worry, that we end up with this appalling deal minus the backstop. What you have to do, what Boris should be doing, is actually scrapping the whole thing and looking at this, holistically.
What are we trying to achieve here? All we're trying to do is leave the EU but have a free trade deal with the EU. And in fact, the political declaration talks principally about, having a free trade deal and frictionless borders with the EU, so it's beneficial to both sides. All we need to do is agree. It can be done on the hour before, 11 p.m. On the 31st October. All we need to do, both parties need to do, is agree that we want a free trade deal. If we both agree that we will have discussions for a free trade deal going forward, we can basically impose Article 24 of the WTO agreement, which allows us to continue trading with the EU and the EU to continue trading with us exactly in the same way as we are now. There's no tariffs. There's no checks at the borders. We just carry on as we are now, and that can carry on for 10 years.
Right, and quite sensibly as well. We want to be able to control the terms of any agreement that we enter into, rather than be controlled by them, which is what we have been for the best part of the last 40-odd years or whatever it is. Boris says today, and he's going to tell Angela Merkel this, that Parliament cannot stop a no-deal Brexit. He thinks that one of the reasons that they're still not really moving and not really budging is because they believe that Parliament can stop a no-deal Brexit. What's your view of that?
Well, I don't think Parliament can stop a no-deal Brexit. Yes, we can have a vote of no confidence. Yes, an election can be called. But all of that would happen after the 31st October, by which time we would have already left with a no deal. So maybe they don't fully understand how Parliament works, or maybe they're still hoping that that something will happen in Parliament which will prevent it. They are desperately hoping that Brexit doesn't happen. They're trying to make us sweat at the moment. And to be honest, I don't think we should be sweating. We should, if I was Boris, I actually wouldn't be going over there at all. I'd be saying to them that we're leaving with no deal, but we'd be very happy to do a free trade deal. If you want to do one, come and see us. You know where we are, 10 Downing Street. My door's always open. That's what I would be saying. I wouldn't be going with a begging bowl, sort of trying to negotiate.
No, and I don't think he is doing that. And I think that's what people who want to see Brexit happening are quite encouraged by, because certainly from my perspective, it feels as though there's been a bit of a sea change, certainly in the attitude of our government towards leaving the European Union. Boris Johnson and Dominic Cummings have been far more positive about doing things and making things happen. And although the naysayers will go, oh, yeah, but nothing's actually happened yet, well, the change in attitude is huge, I think, and the change in direction, the change in strategy, and there is now a much firmer belief that we are leaving the European Union, which I never believed we would under Theresa May.
Well, that's right. I mean, what we really should have been doing for the last 3 years is preparing for no deal. Because, A, if we leave a no deal, we want to be fully prepared. But also, if we are fully prepared, it actually does enhance our hand in any negotiations. As I say, the EU don't want no deal. They also do want this money out of us. And that, in fact, that's another problem with the withdrawal agreement. Because if that withdrawal agreement, if that transition period continues, it's not 39 billion. We have to keep paying them. So the longer we're negotiating, we have to keep paying more and more and more. It is ridiculous. This whole withdrawal agreement should just be scrapped. We shouldn't be talking about it anymore. We should just be talking about either leaving with no deal or leaving and moving forward with a new free trade deal between the EU and the UK.
I'd read all these things about 20 minutes being saved from London to Birmingham, but the backstory of that is that they're trying to claim it will free up commuter lines into London by taking these express trains through. So that means this whole 50-odd billion is being spent for London again and not for the rest of the country.
Yes.
That to me just stinks.
It does. It makes no sense to build this train, to build a train line that gets you actually slower, effectively, from London to Birmingham. Because if you go on a train from Euston, you're much more centrally based than if you come into Old Oak Common on the west side of London, which is nowhere near the centre of town, which will take you another 20 minutes anyway to get into town from.
Right, which backs up this thing that the real reason they're doing it for is to free up a load of commuter trains for the lemmings going into London every day.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Well, the other thing you've got to remember is it was a Lord Adonis project, so anything that he touches, I'm afraid, is probably overpriced and overzealously put together by somebody with not much of an attention to detail.
You made one of my Christmases come early. That little guy, Lord Adonis.
Oh yes.
My God, I've never. He was on at 7:30 this morning, and I had to turn the radio off. It was like what he was talking about, Mike. It was ridiculous. I couldn't. He didn't get an MEP, so he's disappointed about that.
Right.
He's disappointed about HS2 because it's going to. He said it was his baby, to use his own words.
Well, if it's his baby, why did he abandon it?
because things got a little bit difficult. When things get a little bit difficult, he doesn't come on rabbiting like he normally does.
No.
But it will be cancelled, Mike. You and your company and your radio station, you keep smashing away at them, and we're going to come, Mike, we're going to come out of there on the 1st of November, and it will be one of the happiest days of my life, even though I am 76 years of age and I've seen a lot.
It's brilliant. And what I want to know, though, Richard, is what they're going to do with all the land that they've acquired, all the houses that they've compulsorily purchased, including the comedian John Bishop's house, for which they paid quite a few million quid. I don't know whether he's going to want to move back in now, is he?
Oh, probably.
I mean, it's a total racket, isn't it? Absolute and utter racket. More sensible, actually, to build what Boris wants to build, which is what he was calling HS3, I think, was he not, between Manchester and Leeds.
Oh, Mike, to be honest, I don't care what they call it, and I don't care if there's a railway that goes 10 minutes quicker than the other one. It doesn't affect me, and I feel sorry for the people who fell for it. It's worse than the climate change people.
Yes, it is. I mean, have you done any carbon offsetting, Richard, today? That's what I want to know.
I tell you what, I'm driving my car, Mike. I just stopped off at Lidl because I'm on my way to my daughter's, and it's a lovely sunny day. I'm going to do a bit of gardening, and you've made me very happy.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Not at all. You're more than welcome, Richard. Thank you very much indeed.
6 years ago, I went on holiday to Florida with the wife, and she got pneumonia while we were out there.
Blimey.
We took her to A&E or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
And to be fair, they did give her immediate treatment, but it only took about 20 minutes before they wanted my credit card, and they took a swipe of that to take £1,000.
Okay.
And they also, even though this was the middle of the night, they wanted a fax from my insurers over here confirming that my wife was covered.
Yes, and that can be quite problematic because you've got to get in touch with your insurers from effectively what is a payphone, right?
It's all happening. She spent 5 days in hospital,
right,
as well as A&E treatment and various other stuff. It came to just under $40,000.
Wow.
And when we got back, the insurance company went into every minute little record of what we declared,
right,
and they discovered that she'd had cirrhosis in 1981.
Right.
Cirrhosis, which is a skin condition. And they tried to say, you didn't tell us about that.
Right.
So
what's that got to do with the price of fish, as they say?
Absolutely, but they will check everything. So when your guest said, make sure you tell them all the details of your medical history, you really have to, because they'll check on it.
And was this a one-off sort of travel insurance policy that you took out just for that trip?
No, we had an annual policy, the pair of us,
right,
and which was quite competitive. But now, if my wife wants a policy now, my goodness, we couldn't possibly afford. She has to take it. I mean, a 5-day one to the United States now costs her about £450.
Blimey, that's incredible, isn't it?
Because she claimed.
Mike, please, could you please get a message over to Johnson and a message over to Farage? If they combine together now, Mike, and do a deal somewhere along the line, and let's have a general election, them guys, they would absolutely clean up, and they'd put the Lib Dems out of business, the Labour Party out of business, everybody else who fancies the chances at getting in. We'd be, within 10 years, the finest country in the world, and we're still a good country, and all these people are spoiling it. And these people like you have a go at, Heseltine, and people like that, they're not worth it now in this new world. They should get out of it and let the new guys come in. Do you agree?
But that's one of the great things about Brexit, Richard, because once Brexit happens, all of these characters will become completely and utterly irrelevant, and there won't be any point in talking to them anymore.
Oh, that's correct. That's absolutely correct.
I think that Macron realises that his votes and his poll ratings go up every time he's not very nice to the Brits. He's got to think about his own elections. He's got to think about what works for him and his country. And he's run out of patience. In terms of what Brexit is massive to us. It's dominated our airwaves, it's dominated our TV screens. We don't talk about anything else, right? It's kept us all in jobs, Mike, so don't worry about that. But, over the other side of the pond, Macron has other things to worry about. And he sees Brexit as a real annoyance. And he also thinks that, well, you know what? We think we might benefit from you guys going out with a no deal. Yes, they might suffer in some quarters, but they can also try and attract more business, more trade, etc., therein. So I think they're coming around to the idea, which is, you know what, we're not going to bend over backwards here for the Brits. We've kind of had enough of them.
Well, also, they don't want it to be too successful for us, though, do they? Because in the end, that will then backfire on the European Union as a construct, because the Italians are now sort of wavering a little bit. It looks as if they're going to have a new election, and if the populists get in, they could be making noises about a referendum to leave the European Union as well.
Well, this is the thing, right? There's never going to be an opportunity where people outside the club can benefit with have better benefits than those within the club, because otherwise the club doesn't work anymore. And so, of course, Macron is going to protect all that he knows, all that he's invested in. He's facing the same problem with this wave across Europe, which is a rise of, we're not happy with our lot. We don't like unelected people telling us what to do. We don't like giving our billions to people and them telling us how we can spend our own money that we've hard earned at work and we're giving away. And so he's facing the same pressure in France. He sees it that in the UK and in the US, we've given in to that pressure. He is fighting that good fight, as he likes to think it is, in his country, and therefore he will not want to bend over backwards, because that's almost like, you know, waving the white flag in his own country as well.